Matthew, how did you get on this journey to awakening?
So it all started around age 18, 19, 20, somewhere within that pocket, where the philosopher Alan Watts kind of just popped up one day on YouTube for me. And I watched either one or two of his videos, and he presented a concept that was completely foreign to me at the time, but resonated with me on such a deep level. He presented the concept of everything in the universe being interconnected, and therefore, if it's interconnected, you can argue that it's one.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time ever, I was like, holy cow. I never even thought about everything being interconnected in some way, shape, or form. And then that thing that interconnects them is almost like the battery that really powers life. And it just started making me completely reprogram and reformat how I thought about the world, the universe, myself as a part of it. And at that time, I felt like I was something that was external or distant from the world, and something that was so
Mm-hmm.
detached. And this really helped me come to grips with really my own reality, why I'm here, what I'm doing to some extent. Really started to put me on that path and start to ask those questions. And after listening to that those conversations by Alan Watts, it really started getting me to start questioning almost everything, and question it in a very positive light, not in a cynical way.
Right.
And I started just asking why to almost everything that I ever believed growing up, anything that I was ever taught, anything I was ever shown. I just wanted to know if it still resonated with me, and if it didn't, then I just dropped it, and I found something to take that place, something that I chose for myself, something through experience rather
Mm-hmm.
than placing it on ideology. And so the last several years, it's just built up more and more, those experiences, and they've brought more and more tangible evidence, in my own opinion, to bring me to where I'm sitting today.
Yeah. Amazing. And so, what brought you in to have a QHHT session? How did you get to that point?
Yeah, so
You
that's
know?
that's interesting in and of itself. About 2 years ago, I feel like these things happen in waves, and
Mm-hmm.
your awakening is a process in which goes periodically. It's not a snap of a finger, and then one moment you're just awoken to knowledge or whatever you
Right.
might call it. But it's a gradual process, and for the last 7 years, it's been building up, and about 2 years ago, it really took off for me in the sense of this thirst for knowledge that built up within me. And I've always loved reading books ever since I was a little kid. I was taught to read on a daily basis. But that kind of reinvigorated within me, and I started just chomping through books. And all of a sudden, I came upon Dolores Cannon
Mm-hmm.
and the work that she's done with hypnotherapy, NLP, quantum healing, past life regressions, soul regressions, mid like life regressions and stuff, and it completely blew my mind away.
Mm-hmm.
It showed me a whole nother world on top of everything I had already been researching. It showed me a whole nother side of consciousness and the brain, if you want to call it that, and humanity and our connection to more beyond just our own life
Right.
right now. And so I started reading her book, which was Jesus and the Essenes, and it was remarkable seeing that whole other side to Jesus, and seeing this tactic or incredible gift that Dolores tapped into, where she can work with a person, put them into this deep meditation, and get them to start tapping into their higher self, get them to start tapping into prior lives, pulling information out that's literally verifiable with like historical
Right.
facts and stuff. It's things that were very tangible for like my left side of the brain, the analytical side. For me as a male, I gravitated to that so quickly, and I was like, this isn't just hearsay in my opinion. Like, she's
Yeah.
actually bringing about proof, and I can even go research these things and double check them and verify them if I wanted to as well. And it was absolutely remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I'm sitting at work, and I had just finished, I think, Jesus in the Essenes, or They Walked with Us, or the second book to Jesus in These Scenes. And something just told me, Google Dolores Cannon and start going down that rabbit hole. And next thing you know, I came upon the QHHT website, and I was like, I hope there's somebody even remotely near Utah. I doubt there's going to be somebody in Utah living in such a Mormon-centric area, and not really even thinking there was even hypnotherapists, let alone a QHHT practitioner, doing it the way Dolores did. And lo and behold, I come upon your name, and I clicked it, went to your website, saw that you practiced in Utah, specifically Utah County and in Orem, and I was like, there's no way. Like, I can't pass this up. Yeah, what are the odds here? And so I decided to reach out to you, and you got back to me immediately, and I felt a connection right away. I felt like this is somebody I can trust, even just from the tone of her voice, the way she's presented herself on the website, everything about it. I felt trusting. And I was like, I think this is something that I'd really like to experience for myself, is try and see if I can bring to myself proof of reincarnation, because that's something that was brought to my mind about 5 or 6 years ago to truly the forefront. I mean, as a kid, I heard about reincarnation. It made no sense to me. I thought it was hogwash. Yeah, it was something from like Eastern practices, and I was like, I don't know anybody who practices Hinduism or Buddhism or anything along those lines, and so I never researched it. Started researching it a couple years ago, and it started really clicking with me, and it made sense. And for me, I was like, it just makes sense that in this beautiful universe that our Creator has put together, why would we only have one shot at experiencing it? And so I started going down that rabbit hole, learning about reincarnation. Then this whole thing happened with Dolores Cannon and her books, Come Upon You, and I'm just like, the universe is trying to give me an opportunity to experience that.
Right, yeah.
And so
now, let me ask you really quick, because I don't remember from our interview, but you're living here in Utah. Did you have background being Mormon? Or did you have that?
So I've had some sprinkling of Mormonism in my day. So growing up in New York, I went to Catholic school, because public school was not the best in the Bronx. And so I went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic schooling all the way up until about, I want to say 6th grade, 7th grade, somewhere in that ballpark. And then we moved upstate. And around that time, I'm about 12 or 13 years old. And my mom comes out and tells us that she had pretty much been Mormon our entire lives, but had been 100%. Yeah, she never shared it with us, had never been to the church with us. We were going to Catholic church growing up, because that's the school we were going to, and you were required to go to their church as part of the enrollment in the school. And so once we had left Catholic school, she came out with this news and told us that when she moved to this country at age 19, she was baptized Mormon, and she wanted to kind of re-stoke that fire and see what was there. And so at like age 12 or 13, I think it was, I was baptized. But by about age 16 or 17, when I moved out here to Utah, to when I graduated high school, I had pretty much walked away from the church at that point. So I was kind of in this state around age 18, 19, or 20 of kind of figuring out for myself what my relationship was to the Creator, what my relationship was to this world and universe that I found myself in. Why was I here? What am I doing here? What's the whole point of it all? And I was already starting to ask those questions, and I felt like there wasn't really anybody outside of me that could truly answer that for me. Something just kept nagging at me, saying, you're going to have to do the work in figuring this out for yourself. Whether it start off with reading books, watching podcasts, YouTube videos, just to get you going, but eventually none of that is going to give you the answer. You're going to have to go about and go within and have experiences to get that. And that's kind of like one of the things that brought me to QHHT is part of that thing of experiencing rather than just reading and watching and being this distant observer. It's like, no, you must experience it to start to develop that for yourself. And so that's how I found myself with you.
So, because I remember the week when you scheduled your appointment, you were a little hesitant.
Yes.
You were like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, well, you have to feel right about it.
Yes.
So it took you a while to kind of get to the place where you really felt trusted it enough
Yes.
to go
And
with it.
and I've found that to be kind of the trend throughout my life. It's kind of been, and I look for these cues now. It's anytime there's something quote unquote monumental that's going to occur in my life, something that's going to be big, that's going to shoot me into a whole nother realm of my existence. It's like there are walls that start to come up right before that event, and it's like the doubt, the questioning, in a negative sense, not questioning for the positive, but questioning towards like withering, not growing, and it's like all these thoughts start coming up and saying like, well, this is quite a bit of money, or well, what are you really gonna get out of this, or what if you never go into trance, or what if you go there and you waste this woman's time, or and all these different things start popping up. But it's like I've learned time and time again to try and give those thoughts their time. Don't completely banish them.
Right.
Give them their time and place, but then move on towards the opposite of those questions, where it's like, so what if this is so much money? Imagine the experience that you might obtain from it. Don't worry about falling into trance. Just imagine if you do fall into trance and what might happen because of it. It's like I started turning those questions into the opposites, and those are what really helped me get here.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, time and time again, anytime something big is going to happen for my consciousness, it's like there are walls that I guess I have set up for myself.
Right. Well, and I think it's natural that we all do that anyway. It's like it is a protection. Our ego protects us from certain
ourselves.
things. Yeah, from ourselves. And it just wants to make sure, And so we do have that doubt. And then when you start becoming in flow, then those walls do come down, because then and everything just flows, and it's in synchronicity, and all of these things just start falling into place. And it's amazing how that happens, but we still have to go through the process. Just like you said earlier, getting to from where you were to here, it's still a process. It's like you have to start off in kindergarten before you can go to college,
Correct.
and learn the steps along the way. So I'm glad that you finally made it. And so when you came, I mean, we had a connection right away. I know when you first came, I was just like, oh my gosh, I could feel your soul. You're so genuine and so kind and so loving. I loved it. So let's talk about your experience of your past life. So let's go into that. And I know you went into a past life right away. Did that surprise you, first of all?
It actually really did. And for me, I still had some of those doubts just recessed deep in my mind, where it was like, you practice meditation on a very regular basis, but what is trance compared to meditation, and can you really get there? What if you're in that chair and all of a sudden, like, your mind really starts blasting you with thoughts and you can't silence them and focus? So it's like, as soon as I got here, I still had a little bit of that nervousness to me, but I love the fact that you do the hour or so prior to building that rapport, having a natural conversation, building a relationship, a true relationship for the first time, not just the electronic relationship, but getting me to that point. So then by the time I'm in the chair and listening to your voice, and also just the tone in your voice, the inflection and everything about it, it softens everything in the room. And so once you put me through that guided meditation, I went back to an area in which I feel like I've seen in either other guided meditations before, or in my dreams, where I was in like this little island with this beautiful waterfall and these four-winged birds and some really wild colors and some amazing stuff. And I remember being there in that water and kind of looking at the reflection a little bit. But for me, it was kind of this mix between, the best way I really can describe it is the moments when you're either falling asleep or waking up, and you have like these really dim glimpses of the environment, and you feel like you're seeing it, but then you're questioning if, like, am I just thinking of this, or did I really see it? And it's just like this back and forth that happens when you're waking up or falling asleep. It's like, that's how the whole experience was for me. It wasn't like I could vividly see it, but it was like, I know I'm pulling this from memory. I can see parts of it. It's like it's going back and forth. And so as soon as I was there in that island and the guided meditation was over, and you brought me down into a lifetime, it was like it all started clicking. It just clicked. And I think the thing that helped the most is that I've come to learn that, like, our five senses are the way in which we draw data out of our experiences and out of, like, this world. Like, through my sight is how I'm pulling visual data. Through my feeling is how I'm pulling feeling data, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And so once you started focusing on those areas, that's what start helping the life come back even more. It wasn't so much of like, what are you seeing? It was more of, okay, what do you feel on your feet? Or how, is it cold? Is it warm? Like starting to interact with the skin. Like, are you tasting anything? Are you seeing anything? Are you feeling anything? It's just as you activate those senses.
And that's one of the reasons why when we do that, we do activate all those senses, because a lot of people, some people can see really, strongly. That's their power sense, Other people don't see it all. Other people feel, and sense. So that's why I go through all of the different senses to see where is your power sense, where is your, where do you connect best.
And it works. It definitely works. And I think that's remarkable. And so for me, when I dropped in, I immediately could sense that like something felt different. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't fantasy, because I can see where people can draw that really fine line between imagination and a past life. But even after the fact, when I went home and started researching things, there were things that I said that I have literally never learned in this lifetime, and I was pretty spot on with what I was saying, because it was verifiable data, which was amazing. But so when I landed, it felt different. Something felt very different. It's almost like the first thing that actually came into my mind was like, humans aren't here yet. That was like one of the first things that came to my mind. I didn't verbalize it. I don't believe I ever said that. No. But that was something that came to my mind, is like, I felt like I was tapping into Matt Santos now and realizing how like in this world, whether we can feel it or not, there are 7.6 billion people and we can feel them all around us. But it's almost like when you're home with your family, and let's say all your family leaves and now you're home alone, just that subtle difference in energy that you can feel of people around you, and then all of a sudden they're gone and you feel like a little bit of that emptiness. Imagine feeling that on the whole planet, of like,
just like you're
no being, you're the only being there. And so it's like that type of feeling. And so that's the first thing that ran through my mind, is there are no humans here yet. And the next thing that ran through my mind is like, I'm on a mission to do something to almost lay the foundation for humanity to spark, to start coming here, to start experiencing this, to start incarnating here. And so that's why I was kind of like trekking through snow, getting to a place, was because I was on this mission, and I had been traveling for, I have no idea how long. I felt like for time was irrelevant to me.
Right.
That's one of the first things I also want to say, is like, I think at some point in the regression, you asked the question about how much time does this take, and I think I might have said something along the lines of, we can't focus on time, because if we focused on time, this would literally never happen. Because it's almost like how we exist now, and we're so driven by time. In that state, time wasn't a factor yet. It was no time. It was zero time. It was just being there and doing whatever you had to do. So I wasn't conscious of time.
Yeah, and one other thing you said, and I noticed, it's like you said you come from the sky.
Yes.
So you obviously came
somehow
from
somewhere. Exactly. And when I said that, there were thoughts that popped through my mind of like some sort of extraterrestrial race, but it didn't really go towards that extent, which I'm sure I might have some roots in that, but for me, it was literally just like there was an energy source that I'm originating from that is not from this planet, is literally external from this planet, and the only way to get to this planet is through the sky. So that's kind of what factored in for me, was I'm not from this planet per se. I'm here doing my mission and my work, but I'm from out there, which is out in the sky.
Right.
So that's the best
and so
way I
I
can
thought
describe
that
it.
was really great coming in. And the thing that I love about the sessions is that you experience so much more than what the information I'm given, because you only give me like a little tiny piece of everything that you see. So I'm really excited and happy to be doing this interview, because now I can see it from a whole different perspective and feel it. So
that's a good point.
Great. Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely. And so, good point in reminding me of being from the sky. So I'm trekking through this snow, and I'm feeling like freezing my physical body right now.
That was another thing. You were shivering. Your physical body.
Yes, I almost because there's this fine line between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind, and I can tell that I'm placing energy in the unconscious mind to do this, but it's like my body's doing this almost like to get my conscious mind back. It's almost like the ego freaking out or something along those lines. Even though it is connecting to that point in time and feeling what I'm literally experiencing, but still I almost felt like it was like my body saying, Matt, stop this. Like, we shouldn't be tapping into this right now. Like, you're freezing, come back. But I was like, no, I need to get this. I'm going through this. This is for me. And I literally remember like me shivering and in the back of my mind thinking like, is Shay going to be able to record this? Because I don't know if like I'm stuttering because I'm so freezing cold right now.
Yeah.
But audio came out great. And yeah, my whole body, I literally felt like I was out in that cold. Freezing cold. Snow on my feet. Covered in animal skin, so it wasn't anything that was considerably going to protect me from the cold. It was just some really thin animal skins tied together by strings, very indigenous type of outerwear. And so I finally walk up to this cave because it's almost like I can remember that this is the cave in which we've done this before. Now I can't verify if we always go back to the same cave because I did describe that this is a dance that we do constantly. It's like an explosion, implosion, explosion, back and forth. But I felt like this was the general area in which we've constantly done it in. And I also believe that that was kind of at that point in time, wherever the continents were on planet Earth, because I do believe this was millions of years ago. Wherever the continents were placed on Earth, because they're not identical to how they are now, that was the geocentric point the center of the planet, correct. So wherever we were coming from, we were dubbing it as kind of the four corners of the earth. I was coming from my corner, my other three brothers and sisters were coming from their corners. We'd come from like all four corners, come to that geometric center, and then go back to where we came from. It was this constant back and forth. And so I later on identified that center as Mumbai in India, which I've literally never researched Mumbai, looked into anything about Mumbai.
And did you look into it after?
Afterwards I did, and it was remarkable because one of the questions you had for me was, number one, will Matthew need to visit this in this lifetime, this place? And my higher self said yes, and I would definitely love to go there, and I will plan a trip to go there. But the next thing...
My body just vibrated when you said that.
But the next thing was I think my higher self said something to the extent of, these caves will be lost for quite some time due to like earthquake type of activity, but they will be uncovered later on. And that's also part of the reason why Matthew must visit this area. Even if he doesn't literally go to this cave or find this cave, as long as he's within the area, he'll kind of retain some of those energies. Supposedly it'll help me unlock like my third chakra point, and well, I guess bring it back into balance. And so I went and looked, and you got to understand, for earthquake activity to happen, it's not like earthquakes happen everywhere on Earth. Like, it's got to be in an area where earthquakes happen. I go online and look, and Mumbai is very active for earthquakes. It has several fault lines in the area. It has earthquakes at the point on the Richter scale of like over 7 to 8 on the Richter scale, and it's pretty active for earthquakes. And that was one of the things that kind of solidified to me. I was like, Matt, you have never done research on Mumbai. You had no idea that there's earthquake activity there.
Known that.
No, literally never known that. And I know Mumbai isn't a place that would be cold or have snow or anything like that, but
at that time,
at that point in time, yeah, like our grid was completely different. Our positioning was completely different. The continents were different. So that's something that can verify to me that there was snow there at whatever point in time, correct?
So you go to the cave, and then what would you experience in the cave?
Yeah, so in the cave, it was pretty remarkable because for me, popping into this lifetime, it wasn't like I immediately had all my thoughts back. It was like I had to kind of regather them and remember stuff while in these feet. And so as I get there, I have these images that I'm kind of still that man that I was in the guided meditation on the island. And so as I'm going through, I'm having these thoughts like, wait, am I really that guy? Like, it doesn't feel like I'm that same guy. Let me kind of go on with this story and see what may come of it. And so when I get into that cave, I see that like there's almost like bedding for about 4 individuals, me and 3 others. I see that there have been like a couple of different things painted on the walls, like animals and different animal paintings, and they kind of scale all the way up and down the wall. I see that on the ground there are like a couple little like bowls and brushes and things to paint with, a couple different like trinkets and tools. Um, I want to say there was like a fire. I was about to start building a fire because I was freezing cold. And I, in the back of my mind, I knew that my three brothers and sisters were on their way, and I had beaten them to the punch, essentially. I
Right,
got there
yeah.
first. Um, but I knew they were right around the corner. I knew I wasn't going to have to wait any time because, again, time was really no thing to me. It was just I got there, they'll be there soon. While they're on their way, I decided to start fashioning some gifts for them. I started at that point tying it to the elements because I started realizing like I'm making a gift for air, for fire, for water, for earth, because each one of them really was tied to that element. Um, and next thing you know, we kind of skip ahead to the next most important moment, and that's when like my brother of earth had just shown up. And that's when it started to really hit me, was because I was getting glimpses of standing in this cave. Fire is what's lighting up the cave. He walks in. I believe it was like nighttime by the time he got there, and it was dark outside. So he walks up, and it's really hard to see him. And as the light hits him, it's like I start realizing like he's not a human being. He is this. He has the shape and the outline of what like humans would be, like bipedal and arms and everything. Um, but like he's constantly changing, like this anamorphous element of earth, where I can see almost like moss and rock and dirt and all these earth-like elements just kind of like changing, and it was really cool. It was absolutely amazing to see. And as I see that in him, it starts reminding me of like what I am. And then I start looking kind of at myself and start realizing like, holy cow, you're not a human being either. Like, no wonder it doesn't feel like humans are here yet, because humans humans really haven't quote unquote been created here yet. It's we're setting up the foundation for them, and you quote unquote me look like almost like mist in the air. It's because of course you can't see air, but it's if you can give air some element to be able to see it, almost like some weird shimmers in the air to be able to see a distinct outline. That's what I was. And I remember saying in the video, like, I don't know how he was able to see me because I could barely see me. I'm just air, and he's earth, and so that means our two sisters of fire and water are almost here. I remember presenting him with his gift. He presented me with a gift. We both kind of started invigorating one another and becoming almost like stronger wouldn't be the word, but like you could see that our energy was picking up. You could see it was picking up. As we got together, as more of us showed up, the energy started really rising.
Which brings me to the second one when fire came in.
Mm-hmm.
I want to show that clip
Yeah.
of fire when fire came in because I think it was so fascinating.
Yeah, let's do it.
That whole experience. So, all right. So now fire comes. What does fire look like?
Just a beautiful blend of just hot red, orange, yellow, bluish, whitish, ever moving flames. It's like wow, the heat coming off of her. It warms this whole cave. I don't even know why we needed a fire.
Mm-hmm. How does that feel to have her in your presence now?
I feel stronger. It's just the energy running through me. It's just
And with each element that comes along, it just creates more strength within you.
yes, it's like I could sense that. It's almost like we pair off. It's like when fire and I get together, we are exponentially stronger. And when earth and water get together, they're just exponentially stronger. it's almost like it magnifies to like a very refined point when the two of us pair off like that. It's not the same as when I'm with Earth. When I'm with Earth, I definitely feel myself raise and become stronger, if that's the word you want to use for it. But when I'm with fire, it's like that's my other half. Wow, my whole body's vibrating.
And so what gift does fire bring?
That was her gift.
Very nice.
Her gift wasn't anything physical, the same way in which air and earth and the way we manifested ours. She is the gift. Wow. When she comes around, she triggers this within me, and that is the gift.
And what is the gift you have for her?
It's almost like I created this little lamp with oil. Why did I create the oil?
So why did you create the oil?
It's almost like that's one of the easiest ways for others to perceive her manifestation.
Very nice. So is there anything else with fire here that we need to be aware of with her presence and bringing in her gifts?
No, it's almost like the fire is like wrapping around my head. It's just making me see things in a whole new way. It's showing me like my other side.
Very nice.
Okay, so after watching that, so what were you feeling, and what was "she is the gift"? What did you mean by that? What was going on?
Yeah, so and right now, I mean, my body is vibrating again as I listen to it and redigest it again. It's remarkable. So the feeling that I had was really this. I had this feeling of cold just running through me for what felt like an endless amount of time. And I'm talking about my physical body now. And the moment she walked in, it's like I think my shivering pretty much stopped, and she just completely wrapped around me in this warm embrace. Like she's like liquid fire, just constantly moving and changing, and has this human form, but it's all just complete flames. And it's almost like when we come together like in a hug and an embrace, it's just the way I try and rationalize it is like fire needs air to survive, and you could argue air would need fire for certain elements as well. It's a symbiotic relationship, and those two, when they pair off, it's just like they magnify one another, and that's really what happened between the two of us. It's the moment she came in and kind of greeted the both of us and hugged us. It's like when she hugged me, I completely felt a whole nother level of heightening occur in my vibration. And I had remember fashioning like four gifts essentially, and the gift I had fashioned for her was something along the lines of like these oils. I had like taken bits of earth and I guess some sort of like mixing of elements to have some oil, and then these oils were highly flammable, so they were a way to keep fire going, just kind of like food for fire essentially, with like a little lamp or something to contain that oil and kind of contain the fire. And that was what I had put together for her. And I remember when she had shown up, I just felt silly almost for preparing this for her, because it's like she doesn't need anything to keep going. Like, she's the source of her own fire. Like,
Right.
she goes endlessly. And at whatever level of heat or fire she wants to be at. And so I felt kind of a little foolish giving her that gift, but it was the thought that counted, essentially. And then for her, like, we all pretty much had fashioned gifts for each other without knowing. Because Earth came in, he gave me a drum. She came in, and her gift to me was pretty much just herself, was her showing
Right.
me.
That's what I love at the end of that one. It's like, and you could just feel the excitement or the joy in you as you're like, she is the gift.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Because it's almost like when you're a child and it's your birthday, and you're just like, ooh, what did you get me? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I felt when she came in. Is like, it's great to see you, but what did you get me? And she was like, well, I didn't get you anything. Like, I am that gift. It's like, let me show you what we can be together, type thing.
Yeah.
And let me show you kind of the heights in which you can reach when I'm with you. And that is the gift. I don't need to give you anything. And also her showing me the pairing off between fire and air and earth and water, between the 4 elements. That was also part of that gift. And so that's to the extent of like my memory of what I can pull from the experience between the two of us. And
That was great. And so then after fire, then what came next?
then water showed up. She showed up last. And she pretty much showed up as almost like we felt like there was a storm starting to brew outside, and it was starting to like rain, and all of a sudden, like, there was almost like a cloud within the cave started to manifest, like dew started to manifest on the walls, a cloud, like humidity, and we started realizing, like, this is our sister, she's here. And rather than like walking in the same way all 3 of us had walked in, as like this almost physical form and like a human shape, she just came in as like just her natural form of like just water as a storm, and then she slowly manifested into like that body shape. But she was pretty much like showing us, because the gift I had put together for her was some sort of like out of animal skins. It was like a cup, just something to hold water, like a flask or a cup or something. And I was like holding that cup, I believe, because I felt like she was about to show up and I wanted to give it to her. But when she showed up in the cave as like this humidity, it's like that cup had filled up to the top with water. That was her showing herself being there.
Yeah.
And she was just pretty much just showing herself in all of her different forms.
Her
like
essence.
in her pure essence. She was like, I'm this storm raging outside. I'm the humidity inside of this cave. I'm the water inside of your cup. And I can be all of those at one time. There's like no stretching me or having to pinpoint me as one thing at one time. I can be everything everywhere type thing. And we were all just in complete awe at her performing this. Because it started bringing back the memory to us that we can be everywhere at all times. Like fire can be at all places at all times. Water, earth, air. All of us can really do this. So it was a remarkable thing to have kind of all 4 of us show up, be in this cave together, and then that's really kind of where the quote-unquote fun started to happen. Was then we started realizing it was almost like we come back and do this every so often. Who knows, it might take tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years if you want to try and quantify it, but it's like every time we come back, we completely forgot what we did the last time. It's like it slowly starts to come back to us, and then we remember, and we're like, oh yeah, this is what we're here to do. We do it, and then we blast back, completely forget, and then we start remembering one day, wait, I'm supposed to be going to this place and meeting my brothers and sisters, and we start trekking back, and then everything starts returning. It was this constant, like, remembering, forgetting. So we get to this cave, all 4 of us are there, and we start remembering, because the paintings on the wall, the brushes and stuff, we start remembering, like, well, when the 4 of us are together, we can pretty much do this dance in which it's like this vortex of all 4 elements swirling together. Like, if you could think of almost like all 4 colors, if you wanted to give them colors, like blue for air, red for fire, green for earth, and I guess like a lighter blue for water, just all of a sudden just going into like a tornado, and you can still see all 4 of them, but they're also mixing in colors. And next thing you know, like, we do this dance, and when we do that, the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water bring about technically the 5th element, which I choose to believe is love, which I think when you have all 5 of those together, it's like almost a 5-pointed star. It now creates like a human, which I believe a human is like a 5-pointed star if you stand with your hands out and arms out. And when these 5 elements come together, the 4 physical elements and the 5th element of love, which kind of is the glue for all of them, we were as close to human as humanly possible, essentially,
Right.
is what I want to put it as. And that's when like all 5 of us are literally one in that moment. And that's when we can be physical enough to grab these brushes and paint on the wall, and physical enough to be able to use our fingers and kind of paint on the wall with our fingers on some of the smoother surfaces, and some of the more jagged surfaces use the brush.
And so what I found really interesting when I was reviewing it back over is the petroglyphs that you were painting. But it was talking about the evolution, because you could see where in the lower you were lower consciousness.
Yes, correct.
And then as you got higher and higher, you could see the consciousness rising within
Yes,
your
that's a good point.
petroglyph.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, it's like what we were trying to build in that room or that cave was just a map to show humanity the growth of consciousness. You're 100% correct in that. It's like as you go from the bottom to the top of the wall, that was pretty much us trying to show time progressing upwards, light moving back upwards towards a single source or something along those lines. And yeah, as you were looking at the bottom, it was more animals that were expressing emotions, thought forms that were more base in nature, more of your survivalistic emotions or thoughts or actions, more of like the bulls.
So do you think that like the first time you went there, you probably did the lower level, and then each
Yes.
time you went back,
Yes.
you did a different
Yes,
level?
I could
and
see
then-
it as a
yeah.
progression in moving up the wall. Every time we come back, we see it was almost like, and again, like I said, every time we go back, we kind of forget, and then we have to remember as we come back to the cave. It's that cave also is a huge part in helping us remember, because everything is vibration, everything is energy, and everything is constantly carrying a frequency to it. And so everything that we've painted in that wall was kind of us imprinting our essence in that moment. And when we come back, it's like we get to grab that energy back and really remember it. And so, yes, it's like every time we went back, we were scaling up the wall, and we were rising in consciousness, and really growing in who we were as this spark of consciousness. And we knew that we were not only painting that there for ourselves for the next time we came back to remember, but we knew that millions of years down the road, eons down the road, there were going to be humans or people or some type of form that would start to recognize this and learn from it, whether consciously or unconsciously. Consciously to the fact that they might start literally dissecting and translating these elements that we were drawing, or unconsciously by just being in their presence, like downloading that energy, like almost like being around a crystal or something along those lines, is by being in its presence, like the two of you are interacting on another level, downloading that information.
Yeah, I do think there was one part in there too that said that there were crystals nearby or in the
Yes.
cave somewhere, so that anyone who would be near that would also get
Yes.
the
Yeah,
downloads
actually,
from
yeah, I
those.
remember that now.
Yeah.
It's that's one of the reasons we chose that area, was because that mountain range had certain crystal elements built into the rock, and crystal is something that just helps amplify energy and help it rise in vibration, and we knew that that would be a perfect foundation to set up as what
to
we were
help
building.
humanity in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah, because they did say that you were building it for future, and then I was asking questions like, how are you communicating?
Mhm.
Or you had said, I think in the thing, that we need to put pictures for communication.
Yes.
So I asked what kind of pictures.
Yes.
So I have a clip on the pictures that you were, putting on there. So let's take a look at that.
Sounds
one.
good.
Are you good?
And what are some of the messages that you're putting on these rocks and the walls of this cave? So that people will get those in the future. What are these messages?
We know that language will be a huge barrier. We understand And so we try to make it as simple as possible. We try to use shapes, colors, even some animals to try and bring about emotion, vibration. That's the key. We know that people won't be able to articulate this with words. They're gonna have to do it through vibration. They're gonna have to just feel it. And so we're just trying to use things that we feel general people throughout time can agree upon a general idea of what that represents.
So give us an example of one image that you've created.
The bull.
Mm-hmm.
The bull. It just signifies just strength, perseverance, hard work, labor, endurance. The aspect of never quitting. The aspect of being in the now. Of just being selfless. We feel like if someone can just get even one of these, our message has made it home.
Very nice. Can you share with us another image and what that represents?
Looking around to see if I can. An owl?
An owl? And what does that represent?
Those huge eyes, they just pierce your soul. What we're trying to represent with the owl is vision, sight, open-mindedness, looking out afar and not judging or having fear, and just being open, allowing those eyes to also be windows to so much information. We also paint birds.
What do the birds signify?
The birds signify freedom, flight. We're trying to tell people that you can be grounded, but we've always had the capability to fly. We just need to tap into different aspects of ourselves.
Is there anything else in this cave and these messages that you feel like you need to let us know about today before we leave this cave area?
I'm getting something about crystals.
Mm-hmm.
There were some aspects of this mountain in this cave that it's not all just rock.
Mm-hmm.
There are some high-powered crystals working through here.
And so what information can you leave us about the crystals that would help us?
Those crystals are ways in which the four of us elements can kind of leave parts of ourselves to help with any soul that comes along these paths, to really help ignite them, push them, help give them confirmation if that's what they need, help them feel that other side to them that isn't so physical. And these crystals are almost like memory chips, in which they can just store energy endlessly. And so if anybody comes to this cave, no matter where their consciousness may be, these crystals can help them. Whether they know that they're there or not, they help them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you first, when I asked you about what other pictures, you said you were looking around. Do you remember looking around?
Yeah, I kind of remember very vaguely, almost like being in the center of the room, and trying to catch a glimpse, because at this point, the room was so intensely lit by like my sister of fire. But then we had done the dance and become physical, and now the only light source was the little fire on the ground. And so it was pretty dim in the cave, like as much as that light could give off. And so I was trying to almost like squint around and just see what I could pick up. And I was definitely starting from like the bottom looking up. And so that's why I think the first thing I said was like the bull, because I could see the bulls at the bottom with a couple other different animals. And then I started looking up the wall. I could see like birds and the owl. I think I remember, for some reason it keeps popping in my head, like some type of like antelope or very fast deer looking animal. But the one thing I wanted to point out that came to me after my session was we were drawing these things almost like off of a memory from something that hasn't occurred yet. It was almost like, since again we didn't exist really in time, it's almost like everything was on the table at that point. It's like, even though animals weren't on this earth yet, because the earth was still manifesting and kind of understanding itself and obtaining its elements, and learning how to use those elements to create storms and climates and all these different things. Animals weren't really there yet. All we had was like basically like some really low forms of life, like single-celled plants, animals, very small forms of fish and crustaceans growing, like that type of stuff. It wasn't like bulls all grazing out in the pasture. It wasn't that yet.
So where do you think that knowledge comes from, or was coming from?
Again, I know that a large part of my remembering was this deep reverence for knowing my source, for knowing like where I quote unquote came from, where I sparked from, where I originated from. And with that deep respect for that source, it's like almost the way like your imagination works, or when you're just driving the car and boom, randomly Groundhog's Day hits you and you're just like, why am I thinking about Groundhog's Day right now? Like, where did that just come from? Like, and you're thinking about a little groundhog popping its head up. It's like you had nothing in your day that pushed you towards that thought, but you had to just manifest it and popped in. It's the same thing. It's like when we're just existing in that time, these random things will just come to us and we're just like, holy cow, we got to paint that. Like,
yeah. Well, I know that even in today's day and age, and I'm trying to help people know this and understand it, is that your thought forms that come in are a lot of times your guides guiding you, and they plant the thought form in there for you to do that. So I imagine that that's what was happening there. Source or some kind of guidance system was in there with you, helping you paint those pictures.
Definitely makes sense. It definitely makes sense, because I know a large part of like the beginning was I was describing remembering being in the cave and kind of praying and meditating, just like in the moments waiting for certain brothers and sisters to show up, was to kind of, even though we don't exist in time, like mentally, we knew that we had to pass time for them to show up. And so while we were passing time, we would say our prayers and meditate on those prayers. And I know that was helping keep that connection strong. And so that's where I can also see where some of these things were coming through, was like during meditations, we'd have these visions of bulls in the field, and we'd have visions of owls perched on the tree or birds flying through the air. And we would get messages and glimpses, even though we wouldn't use words, like I said. It was almost like the communication was instant between us, because we were really just pulling off of like memories and experiences. We could still understand that these animals had a general consensus to them. It's like a bull really represents strength and power and perseverance and really just chugging along, and a bird represents flight and being free and not grounded and tied to anything. And so all four of us just understood this.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Hmm.
And I love the part in there about the flying too, because I have a lot of flying dreams, and I love the flying.
Yeah, I think
So
I really think that's just one of those things that's in there to really get us within our human state to just again just ask questions, push limits, don't accept boundaries. I'm not saying go jump off a skyscraper and see if you could fly,
today.
not at all, no. But what I'm saying is that if you do your research, you will find some stories of some remarkable things that humans have accomplished where there really have been some verifiable sightings of certain humans or priests or different people doing some incredible stuff along the lines of flight.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and right now, because of the energy space where the planet is in,
mhm.
all of our abilities are coming up.
Yes.
You know, we're able to get that psychic ability. We're able to communicate telepathically. We're able to fly, you know,
Yeah.
walk across water.
Yeah.
All of these things are coming up for
I've
us
heard
to
I've
be
heard
able
some
to
incredible
do.
stuff, like even during the time of Jesus, of like people running across, like, let's say 100 miles in less than like 10 minutes. Like, it's some
Yeah.
incredible stuff where like it's almost like they're a gazelle. Like every time they touch the ground with their foot, they jump like 20 feet. It's some incredible
Yeah.
stuff that people have documented. Whether
Yeah.
it's true or not, I choose to believe that we as humans don't have as many boundaries as we put on ourselves.
Yeah, we
And-
don't. It's those programs that we're running, the limitations that we're running. So I know when I do sessions, I ask now to remove any limitations or thought forms or things because we are so powerful and we
Yes.
don't even know. We've forgotten.
Yes.
We've forgotten. So that's what these sessions do for people is help them start to remember their greatness and help them remember that they have these abilities.
Yeah,
So
I think that's
it's
powerful.
beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so then after you have the 4 elements and you've all done your petroglyphs, then I can't remember even how we ended that session, but
Yeah, I think honestly, I think we pretty much did all of that, and I want to say we pretty much did the dance again to kind of become unraveled. And I remember describing it almost like an explosion. It's like after we come together, that second dance that removes us from each other, it's like it's more of like that tornado, and then it just explodes, and we go shooting back to our 4 corners of where we came from. And again, I think as I've looked into this, like the 4 elements on this earth, people do believe them to be almost like their own personas, their own characteristics. They bring something, each one of them brings something different to this world. And I think, honestly, like at that point in time, we were that first wave of elements to ever come to this planet to help really start helping it get its foot going in its growth and where it wanted to go. Because I do believe our planet is sentient. It is a being. And it was trying to grow and do the things it needed to attract more beings to it so they can all grow together.
right.
And so that dance that we were doing of the larger dance, which was the going to the 4 corners and coming back, it's almost like we were doing that to really like spread our wings across the entire earth back and forth, like almost like a scanner going back and forth and like laying down information or something. Like it's
Maybe putting information into the power. I mean,
yes,
not the
like
power,
into
but
the
grid
conscious
or
grid.
something.
Yeah, the consciousness grid.
grid.
It's just like as
Yeah.
we would go into an area, it's like when we went into that area, we were leaving parts of ourselves there to say, in this area there will be air, so there can be winds down the road.
Yeah.
In this area there will be earth, so you can have rocks and mountains and grass and trees. And in this area there will be fire, so that you can have heat and climate, and eventually man can create a fire. And
Right.
water to be able to drink and create humans and have a climate and an atmosphere. And so it's like we're coming here to kind of establish that and really anchor that here.
Right. And in the consciousness, when you say that, it's amazing because we are all one in that consciousness, in that conscious level. And so you were coming here in the very beginning to plant that, to
Yes.
lay that foundation,
Yes.
so that when human form did start coming, then there's things there to pull out of the ether.
Yes, like the potential,
You
the
know,
potentiality
yeah.
is there. It's all there, like on a table. Like you could just grab the tool and go with it.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
So-
That really is one of the best ways to explain it.
Yeah, I thought it was beautiful. And then afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
we always connect to the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And then we connect to the higher self and find out why you were shown that.
Mm-hmm.
How did it feel when we were able to connect to the higher self, and what did your
Yeah.
higher self have to say?
So, I mean, even right now, it just started again. Like my goosebumps and everything start flaring up. Like immediately when we start to interact with the higher self, it's almost like I could tell throughout the whole time this was my higher self bringing through the information. But when the life was put to the side and the emphasis was just focused on the higher self, it's like my energy shot up 10 more levels. It's like I felt my goosebumps flare up even 10 more levels, like during the session, and throughout the whole higher self session, it's like I was just vibrating, just firing off. And I remember one of the first things that my higher self brought through, like one of the most distinctive things was like throughout the whole time, I felt as almost like I was a passenger in the car. It's like I felt like this whole time I've been the driver of the vehicle, coasting along, and for the first time ever in my life, like I really stepped to the side in the passenger seat, and like I could feel myself being like the whole car and everything. Like for the first time realizing that, like,
Be the one.
yeah, like holy cow, I'm not the driver of this car. Like I actually am the whole car and the person sitting in it. Like I'm the whole thing. And now like the car's speaking to me like in a weird type of way. And so my higher self steps through, and again, the most distinctive thing to me was my higher self was talking in third person the whole time. It was talking about like Matthew, and like I never refer to myself in the third person.
You would never talk
I never call myself Matthew. Like it was just some things that I've literally never done. And I felt it to be a very, very masculine presence. And he, for lack of a better term, he immediately came out and said like Matthew might have been literally part of the consciousness of air, not that he was air as one single human or one single being, but he was part of this thing, and he might have been part of it or he might not have been part of it, like but that's also part of us as consciousness being one, is we can tap into almost anything
and be a part of anything.
Exactly, because in reality, if that is the case, then it doesn't matter if he was a part of the air element or not. Like the experience is the value. And I choose to believe that memory was real and that I was part of the air. And I think that's why he laid it out that way, was again to not go against my own free will and try and force this on me and say, no, that this was real, Matthew. You really did live this, and now you must believe it. Even with the experience out on the table, it was still kind of like, no, he still has to choose to believe this. Like it's still on him. As this little piece of consciousness that he is. And so he comes through and states that, and then starts to go into detail on, if I'm trying to remember correctly, like how much of an impact that can have on me as a soul, to start to really realize that I am more than just this lifetime. And that I have.
And that's what so many people that I meet, I always tell them, you were so much more than just this.
Yes.
If you only knew. And
Yes.
you know, my sister, I've been trying to work with her for years, and she's heavy, older, you know, and she just sees this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you could see how beautiful you are so beautiful, because you're so much more than this. You know, you would think differently, and I like to tell people that all the time, because we are so much more than just this.
Seriously.
We're everything.
Seriously, and I think that was the biggest point he was trying to drive home in the beginning for me. And then the next point beyond that was really just verifying this connection that I've had to my higher self, because I've always thought of it as being this separate thing or being this thing on another dimension, and that all might be true, but it's all part of me. It's all one. It's not sections or chunks of me. It's all me. And in the moments when I've truly been me is when I've been feeling like the goosebumps and getting the chills and things like that. And that was quote unquote him showing me that those were the moments when we were really syncing and vibing together the most. And that if you can continue to do certain things and be me, that can get stronger. And that session on that day was really the first time in this specific lifetime where we really have put everything aside, put all the walls aside, and gave each other time and space to acknowledge one another.
Yeah.
and really understand one another, so that moving forward from that time on, anytime I have certain feelings now or feel certain subtle vibrations or shift in my vibration or in the area around me, I can now say to myself, I am being my higher self in this moment.
Yeah.
I am channeling my highest self that I possibly can in this moment.
That is beautiful. And really, that is ultimately what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to bring those into alignment so that we have that connection more and more often.
Mm-hmm.
So that is beautiful to hear.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And I think the biggest thing for me was I ever since I learned about quote unquote the higher self about 4 or 5 years ago, I always had this thought of it as being a separate voice, something that you would hear differently, or to come through almost like, for lack of a better term, almost like a schizophrenic, where you're hearing 7 different voices in your head or something like that. And I think that has its own time and place and its own explanation. But for me personally, that's not how it works. I think for other
Yeah.
people, it might work that way, where they have
Right.
contracts with their higher self, where they say, hey, anytime you come through and you bring information, I would like for it to be in this specific manner. I think for me, it isn't anything along those lines. It's really just, if I can be in the now, if I can push everything else to the side and just bring my true authentic self out and just let it flow and not think about my thoughts before I state them and just let it go, that is the moment when I'm being my highest self. Because that's really how the entire QHHT session went, was if a thought came, I just let it flow. I just
Yeah.
went with it. The moment I started to think about that thought and put a filter up and say, do I want to say this or not? And should I go this route? That's when I knew my conscious mind was breaching in and I was now my
Yeah.
small self, rather than being my highest self. And so and again, that's what I was trying to teach myself during the session, was like, continue to go with that intuition more. Continue to go with that first thought more.
Yeah.
Whether you let the first thought come up and then question it, but let that first thought come up.
Come up. And that's exactly what the higher self is, that first thought that comes up when you're not thinking about it. When we stop and think about it, that is the smaller self coming through every time. And it comes up in all the sessions that I do. So when you start to recognize that, and and you just have that intuition and you just start trusting it, like you said,
Yes.
you are connected.
Yes.
So on that level, so often and more often. So that's beautiful. A couple of things that I'm going to point out.
Yeah.
Because I remember them saying something in there about you kind of came here to push the wrong buttons in people sometimes.
Yes.
Which really surprises
definitely.
me.
Yeah, that was very surprising.
Because you're just so easygoing most of the time.
Exactly. That was the most surprising thing to me. Again, as like my chills come up, which is that, like my higher self came through and said something along the lines of, part of my existence this time around was to like ruffle feathers the wrong way a little bit. And I think the reason that comes up is because, like, in my entire lifetime, that's been one of the areas that I've always been so conscious of, so self-conscious of, is like, don't rub people the wrong way. Don't ever, even if you feel like this is the right thing to say, like, don't say it in this moment, because they're not going to take it the right way. They're going to look at you in a weird way. Like, going against the grain is not the way to go about life. And when my higher self came through and said that, I could tell that they were kind of pointing out to that aspect of me and saying, like, no, in some of those moments you should listen to that. Like, no matter how uncomfortable it might feel, within respects, of course, like, state what's on your mind. If you feel like they're talking about A, but they should be talking about B, mention B. Like, don't just continue going with A because that's what everyone's doing. Like, be the one to bring about the new thought. Be the one to kind of bring about the new question. And I think that's really what I was hinting at towards myself, was as I'm coming upon all these rememberings and new ways of perceiving the world, share those perceptions with people. Because as you ruffle their feathers a little bit, like, do it, of course, like I always do, in a respectable manner.
Yeah, exactly.
But as you start to give them new perceptions, you completely shake up their whole world in a positive light. You get them to start to wake up to more and open their eyes to more and open their minds to more by kind of going against the grain. If you let everyone continue to do the same thing they always do, they're not really going to grow in a sense. And as you kind of go against the grain, you provide opportunities to let people grow and myself to grow. I'm not separate from any of this. And so I think that was one of the biggest lessons for myself personally when it comes to my personality, is which goes hand in hand with the overall lesson for myself, which is to listen to that first thought, to be my higher self, and really envelop that. And part of that is going to be ruffling feathers a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we do, but we're all right now, like me too, the same thing. I'm a little cautious to say things.
Yes.
Because this is a new paradigm that
It
we're
is.
bringing out, and not everybody's open to receive it
Correct.
yet. So we're kind of walking on eggshells, making sure that, it's okay to say and do what we came here to do.
Yep.
But we're both on that journey, and that we're doing and rolling out what we're supposed to do. So there's one other point I want to make out, because I think that this was amazing, because they did say to you that you were going to be the spoke in the will to bring your family members together.
Yes.
If I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
you're right. I think as part of my connection with the higher self, it did come through that part of my existence in this lifetime was to start sharing these concepts and perceptions with my family members. As I start doing that, that's what's going to start bringing all of us back to an even closer state. I mean, my family, we're Hispanic or Latino, whatever you want to call it, and so by nature we're very close. But there are definitely different sections of my family that could be closer, and there are different pockets of pain within my family for different reasons. And I think part of my existence is to help kind of ease that or bring new light to those situations. I mean, one of my gifts in this lifetime has always been the ability to really see things from different angles and to have different perceptions, and to not be so biased on one area and be so polarized, is to kind of allow everything to come together and then see it from all angles. And so what I've found time and time again is people get locked in one point of view and one way of looking at a situation, and all they need is a quick conversation to see another point of view, and next thing you know, they're like, oh my goodness, I never saw it that way. And so that's something that I've been able to bring about time and time again in people, especially my family members. And I think that's something that I need to start doing more of, is continuing to communicate more with my family members to bring about those aha moments, so that my aunt over here and my uncle over here can mend their relationship, and that my mom here and my aunt over here can mend their little relationship, and just these little things, because this specific lifetime is so short, and you don't want to
you want to
accrue
get
all
the
that
best
karma and
out of it you can, and help clear up as much as you can, because I know we all came here to clear a lot of that. And many of my sessions we've been told that this is a lifetime to clear all the karma. There will be no more karma. So, people here are tying up ends, and they're getting ready for the ascension to be the light beings, and so that they can quit being on that karmic wheel. And then they can go on and do whatever else they need to do.
Because I think one thing that became very clear for me during the session that my higher self really let me see, was just the concept of your soul group or your soul family. And even though we might feel so individual here right now, I really do choose to believe that our brothers and sisters, our parents, our uncles, our aunts, our grandparents, we're all part of that same soul family. And outside of this physical existence, we really are one giant cloud that is the quote-unquote Santos family. And we all that cloud decided to split off into Matt and my sister and my mom and my dad, but we really are all one. And as we start to come together and heal these wounds, it's we're helping the whole cloud. And that's, I think, why our ancestors hang around and become spirit guides and do all these different things, is because they want us to succeed. Because as we succeed, we're helping the entire soul group out to all progress as one, or all ascend as one. And so I think that's something that was made very clear to me with that intense connection with my higher self that day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to thank you for coming and sharing your session with everybody today. And thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Namaste, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Shay.